Hello guys, MonkeyBot here, and today we're going to be starting my prediction on how the Dogs of War should be introduced into Total Warhammer 3. Now I think this is going to be a very unique campaign. I'll be first talking about the campaign mechanics that I think are going to be coming alongside this race pack. I'll then move on to talk about the characters I think we'll be seeing. That's the Legendary Lords and the Legendary Heroes. And then finally, we'll be adding them to my Immortal Empiers map where we've added all of the other Legendary Lords so far. For those of you that don't know the Dogs of War, they are the last remaining faction that has received an army book from the 8th edition Warhammer Fantasy setting. And they are a mercenary faction that's basically made out of all of the outcasts from a variety of different races. So you've got the Empire units in there, you've got Bretonnians, you've got Orcs, you've got Dwarfs. I think you've even got some vampires in there as well. So it makes sense that this would be one of the last races to be added because you're going to be using so many units from so many races that are already in the game, plus a few unique ones for their specific race. So that being said, let's get on to the campaign mechanics that I think will be coming alongside this race pack. Now, I want to talk about the big meaty part of this campaign, which will be the mercenary mechanic. We already have a mercenary mechanic within the game, and that's with the Ogre Kingdoms. But let's be honest, the Ogre Kingdoms side of this is just a little bit, let's be honest, a little bit shit. So for those of you that don't know, the Ogre Kingdoms have a contract mechanic where you are given a mission from another race to maybe take out this city or take out a lord of some kind, and then by doing that you are given a relationship buff with that specific faction that gave you that contract, as well as a measly amount of money, maybe a few thousand gold. But if you amplify this mechanic to an extortionate amount, it could be really good as a campaign mechanic for the Dogs of War. And to be honest, I want it to be so good where it's actually their primary source of income and they are encouraged to do this. I think these contracts should be much bigger, but you should actually get rewarded for doing them. So let's say Karl Franz is losing the war against Vlad and Isabella and he needs to hire some mercenaries to help him out. So he's offered you a contract where if you can take out a certain province that Sylvania is currently owning and then gift that province to Karl Franz, then he will give you a huge amount of ward, let's say something like 50,000 gold. Yes, 50,000 gold may seem a lot, but in my head, I'm thinking that the settlements aren't going to actually make much profit. I think there's going to be two ways that the Dogs of War will be making money. One is through trade resources and the other will be through the contract. There will be no income building. If it is, it's going to be a very low amount of income, let's say 50 to 100 gold. The level of income that will be coming in from your settlements is going to be very similar to Tomb Kings, for example. But the difference is that you actually have to pay for your troops here. So to pay for your troops, you're going to have to go out and do these contracts. And this will give you a variety of different campaign experiences because I think it should be based on if that faction is currently losing a war that they're in. So going back to the Karl Franz and Vlad and Isabella war, the contract that you will receive will be the one that is currently losing the war. So if Vlad and Isabella are on the back foot and they're about to be wiped out, they may offer you that contract to hire the troops. If you're winning a war, you do not need to hire mercenaries. So it doesn't make sense for the winning faction to hire out these mercenaries to help them. This will mean that every campaign experience is vastly different based on who is doing well in that current campaign. And you can obviously get a variety of these contracts coming at the same time. You're not going to be limited to one contract. So if you want Vlad and Isabella to wipe out Karl Franz, sure, let them wipe them out. And then you can go and help out maybe the Dwarfs, for example, who are losing against the GreenSkins. You can choose your contracts, giving you so much power in the campaign map. On a side note, I also think that contracts should be a thing if you're not playing the Dogs of War and you should be able to hire them out. So for example, if I was playing as Karl Franz, I should be able to hire one of the Dogs of War factions to go to war against my enemy and I will pay them a huge amount of gold to do so. But knowing very well that someone else could easily pay them to go to war against me. This doesn't make you safe from the Dogs of War. Just because I've paid them a contract does not mean that someone else won't pay them more money to attack me back. Now, going back to the actual Dogs of War mechanic, yes, I do think that these contracts should be their main source of income, and this will give you the incentive to try and do these as quickly as possible, because as soon as you've completed that contract, you will then gain a huge amount of money, but you will be losing money fast. You have to pay for your troops and you do not have the income, meaning you want to get the next contract done before you've completely ran out of money and you can't even afford your own troops. This will turn into a really nice balancing act of, do I want to take on this contract, meaning I have to recruit another army, which means my upkeep will be higher, or do I want to reject that contract because I'm already focusing on another contract, and if I overextend myself, I'll run out of money, and then you'll be in a terrible situation where you can't afford any of your armies. If you overextend too quickly and you take on too many jobs at once, you will suffer drastically from this. So that's enough about contracts. I think you kind of get the idea from this. I want to start moving on to their recruitment, because they are a mercenary faction and they gain troops from so many different races across the Warhammer world, and I think their recruitment is going to be a little bit unique compared to your standard recruitment. Yes, I do think they should have recruitment buildings in their settlements, because that's all they're going to have. They're just going to have trade resources and recruitment buildings, but I think there should be additional ways to get troops on top of that. And I think there's going to be a variety of different ways to recruit units, though. I do think that they're going to have their standard 8th edition army book that you can recruit from your settlement, but I also think there's going to be almost like the Warriors of Chaos warband system, where you can just recruit units on the go depending on where you are. So for example, if you go into the World's Edge Mountains, you will be able to recruit dwarf mercenaries or orc mercenaries to join your rank. I think these units will start off as their basic tiers, so maybe you'll just get some basic dwarf warriors, but as you improve your relationships with that dwarf faction that you're helping out, you will be able to get higher and higher dwarf units, maybe even going all the way up to Ironbreakers. And this should be the same for every single race in the Warhammer world. If you take these contracts from these races and you improve the relationships with them, you will be able to get higher and higher tier units to join your armies. So in theory, you could have every type of unit in your army, and you could make the ultimate like Doom stack, for example. You could end up getting Sisters of Avalon archers with your Ironbreaker front lines, and then you've got your Bretonnian cavalry going around smashing everything. You're going to have, and you could take every single strength from every single faction and put it in your armies. And this is why I think Dogs of War have waited so long to be introduced into the game, because it's going to use everything that every race has already introduced. It makes perfect sense why this is the last army book to be added to the game. And I think that's how the Dogs of War are going to play out. That's the campaign mechanics that I can see in this. And I think the Ogre Kingdoms should adopt a little bit of this as well, particularly the contract mechanic. I think the contract mechanic for the Ogre Kingdoms is just so bad. It just needs that little bit of a push to make it worth doing. Because again, they are also another mercenary faction. It doesn't need to be quite as strong as the Dogs of War version of it, but I still think it needs to be strong enough to be worth doing. So that's it for the campaign mechanics. Now I want to start talking about some characters that I think will be coming into this DLC. The first character I want to be talking about, and I think it's the most iconic one, would be Borjo the Besieger. So Borjo is the Prince of Mariano, the capital of Tilia, which, to be honest, is already a little bit cramped. I think a better start location for a Dogs of War faction would be at the south of the Border Princes, but for Borjo, he just cannot be outside of Tilia. It's just a bit weird. It's like removing Karfrand from Reichland, for example. It's just going to be a bit weird for that. So I'm going to place him in Tilia just because it makes sense lore-wise, but this could be a really challenging campaign depending on who you side with. So all of the factions surrounding you could either be your enemies or your friends. That's the whole point of the Dogs of War. So you've obviously got Clan Squire with Ikit, you've got the Pirates of Sartosiv, you've got Belagar nearby. So you've got quite a few friends and enemies around you. So it depends on who you want to side with, what contracts you want to take, and see where your campaign goes from there. So to be honest, it's hard to tell if this is going to be a difficult campaign or not. It would really depend on who offers you these contracts and how good of a relationship you can get with these surrounding factions. The next character I think we'll be seeing will be Lucrezia Belladora. She is known as the most beautiful woman in all of Tilia, and she will be the caster legendary lord that we'll be getting with this DLC, who has a combination of the Law of Shadows and the Law of Death. Although she's technically from Tilia, she is one of those Dogs of War characters that can literally go anywhere. So I'm going to take advantage of that, and I'm actually going to use her to fill up the southern jungles in the settlement of Zlatlan. This is probably the most empty place on the Warhammer map right now, but it still gives her a little bit of opportunity to work with a variety of different factions. And unlike Teclis, I do think that she will have a little bit more opportunity to grow here. I think Teclis's faction, you're kind of forced to go into the Southern Chaos Waste, when with Your Kletzia and the Dogs of War, you aren't really forced to go to war with either faction, or you could go to war with both. It's completely up to you. You have so much more freedom in who you want to be friends with here. So I think a start location for a Dogs of War character down in the southern jungles is a perfect opportunity to start filling up that space a little bit. So moving on to the last Legendary Lord that I think we'll be seeing, because I still think we're going to be getting 3 Legendary Lords, unfortunately, and not 4, very similar to the Chaos Dwarfs. And I think that last Lord we'll be seeing will be Marco Colombo. Marco is an expert huntsman that wields a crossbow, and he was the first human to discover Lustria. So this will give the Dogs of War all 3 types of Legendary Lords. It will give a really nice melee focused Legendary Lord, a nice supportive range Legendary Lord, and then you've got your magic user. This fills all 3 options, and I think it will be perfect for the Dogs of War. So going back to what I said, he discovered Lustria, so I think that'll be a perfect place for him to start. I think he's going to be taking over the New World colonies in the settlement of the Monument of the Moon. This will give him a good opportunity to do what he does in lore and make good relations with the lizard men, but at the same time, he is also a Dogs of War faction, so in your campaign you could easily betray them and side with whoever pays you the most amount of gold. You're close enough to a variety of factions that could really pay you a good amount of money. You've obviously got Mazda Monday very close north to you. If you go down south, you can meet up with Marcus Wolfheart and Yuan Bo. You've got Count Noctilus to the east, and then you've got the High Elves to the northeast, and even you're close enough to Marathi as well if Marathi wanted to send a few gold your way. So you've got quite a few options on how you want to play out your campaign, and I think it could be a very unique experience every time you pick it up. And that's going to be it for the Dogs of War. I think they're going to be a really unique campaign. I think they're going to be extremely fun, to be honest. They're not going to be your traditional empire builders, so if you want to go paint the map, I don't think this faction is going to be for you. But if you want to mess around, be a bit Tzeentchy by playing with different factions, you're very isolated like the Wood Elves because you don't need to expand very far. But then you've also got your main mercenary mechanic, which is where you'll be making your big bucks. So let me know what you think about these campaign mechanics in the comment section down below. And let me know what race you want to see next also, because I think I'm still going to go down the DLC race path. But until then, guys, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye for now.